She said give her 60 seconds, 30 seconds to start the live video.
Okay.
We're good, Dana.
All right, then let's go ahead and get
I
started.
didn't hear that.
She said give her 60 seconds, 30 seconds to start the live video.
Okay.
Are we still good to go, or we need 60 more seconds?
Now we should be. We were just getting the broadcast, the YouTube broadcast was out of sync, coming a few seconds late, so I think now we're good.
They had a great voice.
We're good.
All right, let's go ahead and stand for the pledge then.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move right along and go to the approval of the agenda.
Madam President, I move that we approve the agenda with the following amendments. Additional certified and classified personnel actions for consideration, item number E3.
Okay, do I have a second?
This is Janine.
Second.
Okay, we'll do a second from Janine, thanks. And Stephanie, are you gonna go ahead and do roll call again for voting?
Yes.
Okay,
Laura? Laura?
Sorry, I said aye.
Dr. Hannigan?
Aye.
Dana?
aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Okay, looks like we have approval. We'll move on to delegations, Q&A, or public comment. Do we have any of that tonight?
No.
Or correspondence?
No.
Okay. So we are now at the consent agenda.
President, this is Laura. I move that we approve the consent agenda as previously amended.
Do I have a second?
This is Mark, I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's go ahead and do a vote.
Laura?
Aye.
Dr. Hannigan?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and move to the discussion items with curriculum reports and family engagement is first up.
Monica?
Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute. I was used to my iPad. This is Monica Diaz, and I've got Mary Carlin here, and we're going to talk about family engagement. Mary Carlin will do a lot of what we're going to talk about because she is, through our LINK grant, helps facilitate a lot of the family engagement activities that we do at the district. So I'm going to share. I'm going to try to share a slide now. Let's see if I can find it. It's up here, but this one. Yeah. Okay, are you guys seeing the slide?
Mhm.
Yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so again, I'm Monica Diaz, the Language and Literacy Coordinator for the school district, and I have Mary Carlin here. She's the Community Liaison and Link Grant Facilitator. And like I said just a minute ago, she helps the district facilitate a lot of the family engagement activities that we do. Engagement versus involvement. Parent engagement is an empowering partnership among families, educators, practitioners in the community with shared responsibilities for the personal success of children. And we also want to think about parent involvement and the difference between that and engagement. This is when parents participate in activities that help promote more of a relationship and opportunities for building additional relationships. And Mary's going to share some additional things.
So we all know that parent engagement and parent involvement are both important to the child's education. What you may or may not know is that there's been a lot of research, some done by Karen Mapp, who has partnered with Scholastic, who we partner with for some of our training. They're now telling us that there's a difference between family involvement as we typically define it, like volunteering in the classroom, attending parent-teacher conferences. Family engagement has a bigger impact on school success than typical family involvement activities. Family engagement takes a true commitment from the schools and the parents. In engagement, there's more of a joint decision-making process. You plan for the future of the student together. So when parents become engaged, they make decisions that their child's success is a priority and that they are going to choose to work as a partner with the teacher and schools. So why does this matter? Because it's documented that children of engaged parents earn higher grades, higher test scores, they have better attendance, they have fewer placements in special education, they have more positive attitudes at school and towards learning, and they have higher graduation rates. During your January update, Mr. Hogan shared the following information with you. 75 parent involvement activity or events were logged the first semester of this school year. The overall attendance included 20,378 participants and an average attendance of 268. Monica and I were talking earlier that we thought it might be interesting when they turn in information if they would say whether their activity was an engagement or involvement. That might be interesting to keep data on. All right. If you have any questions about the difference between parent involvement and parent engagement, now's the time to ask, because you're going to have a pop quiz. Here's how it works. I'll read the prompt, and since we don't have any buzzers or whistles or anything for you to ring in, I'll just ask you to be honest and think in your mind which is an example of parent engagement or parent involvement.
The answer's already on this one. Yeah.
All right, are you thinking? Donuts with dads, muffins with moms. You were right, that's involvement. That's what everyone was thinking, right? How about literacy night? We're calling that engagement because at most of our literacy nights, there is a component where the families are learning things that their children are learning at school. How about fun night? That's an involvement activity. How about family visits during instruction time? Janine, you're doing great. I can read your lips. You're right, that is engagement. How about eating lunch with your kids at school? Right again, that's involvement. Movie night. Again, that's involvement. Sharing state standards for content areas. You could probably tell by the way that was worded, that's engagement. A little deeper. KRR Life Nights. Those are really a great activity for parent engagement. They do all kinds of learning, parents and kids both, at those life nights. And I'm sure you all got them correct, right? So here's a continuum that we really like. At the bottom, you see that parent involvement and family or parent engagement both require building relationships. At the top, you see that parent involvement grows into parent or family engagement. You don't really just come in and start with family engagement. Schools are going to have parents coming in at different places on the continuum. Staff will need to meet families where they are and provide support, continue to grow relationships. Our goal is just to build relationships with families and then move forward. Those that are ready can be encouraged or invited to take the next step. Try to consider what may be a challenge when getting families or parents engaged. There's a lot of things that come to mind. Parents may not trust the schools because maybe they've had a bad experience. They feel like they lack the skills to be able to be helpful. They don't speak the same language. And they may have different backgrounds, culture, and they may be living in poverty. So we partnered with Scholastic to be able to provide some workshops for us, all paid for through the Link grant. The first year, all of the schools were invited to send a team. Ideally, a team would be 5 to 6 people from the staff of the school, but in our case, we had to work with 1 or 2 because we couldn't have that many people out of all the buildings at the same time. It consisted of parent liaisons if they had one. Some of the principals attended, the counselors, the teachers that are leaders in the school. They attended over 5 days and learned about the essential practices of effective family engagement. We had a really engaging, enthusiastic, knowledgeable presenter. Her name was Sherry Wilson. And she taught us about building relationships, leveraging strengths, and that means taking advantage of the parents and the things that they may have expertise at. Supporting family engagement, supporting learning and family engagement is designed to support academic and developmental goals. Working in groups, successful family engagement efforts encourage networking among the families so they can help each other. If they have questions, they're away from school, no one's there to ask. We encourage them to network with their neighbors, other people that have children in the school. And the last thing we worked on was practice and feedback. Because we know that the parents are going to need a lot of support and they'll need to be coached along as they go. All of the schools were given the opportunity to plan family engagement activities using all their creativity and everything that they learned from those 5 in-services. And I think there were some posters that were still up in the boardroom you might have been curious about, some interesting posters. Those were some of the plans that the teams came up with. Okay, for year 2, that's this year, we're concentrating on the area of family engagement assessments. So there were 5 schools that participated: Gertrude Walker, Charles Stones, VO, A. Hubert, and Plymell. Step 1 of this process was a physical walkthrough of the building. Step 2 was a review of the printed material, a review of the school's website and the parent portal, and a shopper's call. That means someone from their staff called the school to see what kind of responses they got to their questions or inquiries. This also included a survey of the building administrators, surveys of the school staff members, and of the families. Those were done online, and a separate company collected and analyzed all the data and came up with an assessment report. It's intended to give a full view of the family engagement practices at each school. So in the reports, they're given ratings. They're given commendations for the areas that were a strength. And then there's recommendations for 4 different goal areas. We know parents aren't going to come to schools if they don't feel welcome. So that was number 1 on the assessment, is having a welcoming environment. The next was communication. How do you get the information to the parents about what the children are learning and what they need help with? The third one was just information, day-to-day information. How is that sent across to the families at home? And the last was empowerment. Are your families feeling comfortable enough that they could come in and be a part of your family engagement process? Does anyone have questions?
So on the school walkthroughs, that was done by the parents that that completed the boot camp the first year, or are these separate, totally separate groups?
No, they were done, the walkthroughs were done by the Scholastic Parent Engagement Team.
Okay.
And they came to the schools and did that. To my knowledge, no one was aware they were coming except for the principal. Some of the principals met with them and gave them a tour, others did not.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so for our next steps, we want to continue to support schools and families to build capacity. That means building their ability to be able to engage. I've been reading a lot and researching some other resources that also provide parent engagement opportunities and trainings. I found a really good one. It's called CAPERC, and they do a really nice job. They're very inexpensive. I think they're free, but they are very, very knowledgeable in the times that I've seen them present, not about parent engagement, but in other areas. I've looked into TASN, the Technical Assistance System Network. Also, with my experience with them, they have great trainers, very knowledgeable in what they do. And then I've also been looking at the State of Kansas resource document, which you can find on that website. Anything you want to add? So we know it's a lofty goal. Like we said earlier, people are going to go at their own speed, not start in the same place. So it's going to take a lot of commitment on the part of the teachers in the schools, but also on the part of the parents. And we hope that that happens. Amen.
Okay, if there's not any other questions, I'll go ahead and stop the share. And thank you all for your time.
I actually do have a couple more questions.
Okay.
So are parents involved in any of the kind of planning or like incorporating family engagement types of activities?
We encourage them to be. In fact, we had a parent that did attend the trainings with us, and that school was able to put a plan together during the time that we had those 4 meetings and implement a lot of the ideas that we had learned about. So that's what the people that were trained need to go back to their schools and find a way to have family engagement activities. And they might just want to start with, say, a literacy night, and build in some learning to that. So the parents are learning what the kids are learning. They also suggested when you have student work hanging in the hallway, that you post what standard that's from, and the rubric, how they're graded on that. But it's the school's responsibility to find the parents that want to be engaged.
And then just a question about family engagement now. And I know teachers already have, plenty on their plates. I just wondered if there was any kind of outreach to our parents or any extra, I don't know, maybe ways that the parents are kind of checked on as well. And this might be something different that's separate from what you're doing, Mary. So maybe that's not a relevant question, but Are you aware of anything we're doing to like keep parents in the loop, keep parents working with their kids now that they're at home?
I know that a lot of the principals and a lot of the teachers put a lot of effort into that now. You're right that it is time consuming, so it does take a large commitment, but yeah, it all starts with reaching out.
Do any other board members have questions?
Yeah, I had a couple. This is Mark. And again, sort of following on that, this may not be directly relevant, but they're certainly topical. In the earlier parent engagement or parent involvement test, what would a Zoom session with a student be classified as?
Are the parents there?
Presumably, if they're young students.
So I assume that you're talking about the situation we're in right now. I imagine.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of parent engagement going on right now. Exactly. And maybe they don't know what the students' long-term goals are, but they know their day-to-day goals.
Yeah, a lot of packets sent out and that kind of thing. And I'm wondering, in this experience that we're going through now, if there isn't some mineable information or data that is very valuable to the whole challenge of engaging parents to engage in their, as you say, their students' future as a shared responsibility at the school. You know, we're putting a lot on the parents' shoulders today.
Right.
And from what I hear, there's a whole variety of, I don't know what you'd call it, classroom management circumstances in those Zoom sessions. Takes a special talent, I think, for a teacher or a provider to work with the parent and the student in a Zoom type setting where the student is at home with all of the comforts and technologies and chocolate bunnies available at home. You know, it strikes me as at the core of this whole challenge of that you both have on your plate and trying to help work with the schools and the teachers, working with the parents to not only understand where the student is at in their learning of the curriculum, but also as individual young persons in where they are in their ability to learn. There seems like there's a lot of potential. It's a lot of work, but a lot of potential somewhere here down the road in the not too distant future to get some a wealth of information on the experiences that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I agree. We should take advantage of that opportunity, and maybe Glenda can help.
Yeah, if I
come up with a survey.
Yeah, we all of our schools are contacting each family a minimum of once a week. That was built into our continuous learning plan. So we do have that documentation. They are keeping contact logs, so we will have that data. In addition, we do have the helpline that the technology folks are manning, and they are keeping track of that data as well. We actually did have a phone call even from Michigan this last week. I think they got their wires crossed about where they were calling, but we're providing technical assistance across the United States. So, but we are getting a lot of data right now from the families, a lot of information, a lot of outreach going on right now.
That's wonderful. I had one more question too. The reports that were generated for the participating schools under this grant, I'm just curious, would those be available to board members?
Glenda?
We actually do have a Google spreadsheet that we can make available to you, Mark. What the schools do is they write down what their engagement night was and how many participants they had. It's a very simple spreadsheet with just numbers and what the activity was.
And Mark,
Okay, thank you.
Mark, this is Heath, and that's the information that we provide during our board updates twice a year.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the ACT results and preparation with Crystal and Mr. Nordby.
Okay, able to hear me okay? Okay, I'm trying a different mic this time, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so Mr. Norby and I are here to talk about the ACT assessment at the high school. So since it's a little tricky to present over Zoom, I'll kind of read the slides and go through them, and then Mr. Nordby will be able to chime in or add any additional information that I don't explain thoroughly. So we just want to talk a little bit about the ACT. I know most of you are pretty familiar with the assessment, but just some general information about how it's structured and set up. And then we'll talk about the administration timeline or how we've implemented that at the high school. And then we'll talk about the participation rate, ours versus our participation rate at our high school. And then we'll talk about some comprehensive data, so our trend data over the last couple years. So the ACT is a standardized college entrance exam. It covers 5 areas: English, reading, math, science. It also has a writing component, which is optional. The majority of our students don't take that part, but it is optional. The 4 of those assessments, English, math, reading, and science, are all multiple choice. The writing is an essay section. It takes about 2 hours and 55 minutes, so almost 3 hours to take the assessment if they are not participating in the writing section. This is just a breakdown of the test, a little more information, the number of questions per each section, and then the number of minutes students are provided, the general content that's covered, and then the types of questions. The 4 sections are all multiple choice. They do cover different content per whatever section they're in. And then some sections do have more questions than others. And again, they have approximately 3 hours, 2 hours and 55 minutes total to take the test. They do get a 15-minute break after the assessments. So this is just, the next 2 slides are kind of the timeline of how how the high school has implemented the ACT and some of its corresponding products over the last 2 years. So starting in 2018-19, which was last school year, the State Department announced that they would pay for all juniors and seniors to take the ACT assessment, and they could do it on campus. So prior to 18-19, any student that took the ACT registered and did so off campus. Starting in February of last year, we were able to start administering the assessment in February. There's a specific testing day, and then we have a specific makeup day. So again, juniors and seniors were allowed to take that last year. So after getting those results in, we got them in about April, and just kind of diving into that data, the high school leadership team set up a plan for how they wanted to address some of the areas of struggle that they saw in students. So we started implementing that this year. So starting this year, 1920, In October, we administered the pre-ACT to juniors, and that was, we funded that locally. The high school paid for that. And their reasoning behind that was to have some baseline data for those students, since the majority of them had not taken an ACT product assessment before. And then this year, which we weren't aware of until about August or September, the state also came out and paid for all freshmen to take the pre-ACT. It's a different assessment than the juniors take, but it's pretty much structured the same. So in October, we were able to give that assessment to our juniors, and then the state paid for our freshmen to take it. We got our results in the end of October. So after getting those results, we brought in a couple trainers from ACT. A couple of them are locally based, and they worked with our staff during one of those district-wide PD days on how to read those reports, the student ones and the building-wide ones that they were getting. So how to dive into that data, and then how to utilize that knowledge with the ACT Academy. So if you're not familiar with the ACT Academy, it's a free service for students. They can sign themselves up, or we can do that as a building. Students are set up, and then they go in and pre-plug their pre-ACT scores, and it'll map out a almost like a study plan of, okay, if you're going to start right now and you want to retake the ACT in February, these are some of the things you need to work on or study or complete before you take the assessment again. So very individualized based on each student's performance. So trained our teachers on how to set students up in that, how to read reports, and then how to utilize that in their classroom. So they're able to differentiate all the different and address all the different needs that students have in their classrooms. Also during that time, they did a really deep item analysis within their PLC. So they did this by department and by grade level, and they did it with their administrators and their instructional coaches. So really looked at those pre-ACT scores, broke it down by question, and looked at ones we did really well in, and then ones that students seemed to struggle in, and then what came up with a plan on how we wanted to address that. Had we already taught that skill and the students were still lacking it? Was it something that we were going to be getting to and teaching in the future? So just a real deep data dive into the different questions and how that could be implemented as a teacher, how that could give me information to help benefit my students with my instruction. The bottom part of the timeline is just kind of what we've done throughout the year, so not a specific date necessarily. So again, the ACT Academy for freshmen and juniors, they offered weekly ACT prep study sessions during mentoring time for juniors, and then daily warm-ups, and they didn't necessarily, every teacher did this differently. So some maybe did them daily, some once a week, some every other. They had the option to decide what that wanted to look like. But basically those were sample questions, exposing the kids to different sample questions that they could see on the ACT, and then how to tackle those questions.
So Crystal, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So which teachers kind of asked those questions or had that opportunity? Were those certain hours, or was it all through the day that these questions might be asked, or how was that structured?
On the
I'll
warm-ups?
jump in there.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I can jump in. For the pre-ACT, Dana, especially for freshmen and juniors, we broke those down. The neat thing about the pre-ACT is we got reports back for every question. What percentage of our students got it right? What percentage of our students got it wrong? What percentage of our students answered which answer choices? So we could figure out why they got it wrong. And so we then disseminated that out to each department: math, science, language arts. And so they would use those in their classes for students to go back through and review. And so a biology teacher for a freshman may take a look and say, okay, guys, let's take a look at our pre-ACT results today. Let's take a look at these 3 questions. Let's take a look at these 4 questions. Why did we get this right? Why did we get this wrong? And just kind of help them get a little better idea about each individual student's performance on the test.
Thank you.
Without review.
So continuing on with that timeline. So about December, teachers met with their students. They usually meet with their students on their individual plans of study. So the discussion around December included those pre-ACT scores and the students' interests as far as post-secondary. Were they college bound, career bound, or undecided? So then looking at their, the conversation happened around looking at their pre-ACT score and then what they needed to do or to prepare themselves to be able to take the ACT again in February. And then in January, so we originally this year didn't know that the state was going to pay for the pre-ACT for freshmen. So last year we worked on a plan on how to get some of that ACT aligned data for our freshmen and sophomores. So we decided to do an ACT Aspire pilot. After we decided to do that, then the state came out and announced that they would pay for the pre-ACT for freshmen, but we moved forward with the ACT Aspire pilot. It's similar to the pre-ACT or ACT. The only difference is you can break it apart more in sections. So students just took the science test during their science class. Same thing with the reading, same thing with the math. The data we get from that's very similar. We can break that down question by question. So they did the same thing with the data as they did with the pre-ACT. So broke it down by questions in their collaborative PLCs. And then just like Mr. Nordby talked about, use that to plan their instruction in areas that they needed to review or address more thoroughly. And then again in February this year, so this was our second year to implement or to administer the ACT on campus. So we did that in February. We did the ACT and then the makeup date was in April. So obviously that won't happen due to the school closures, but we had really, really good participation. We had about 228 students who took the ACT on campus this year. And this year, and my timeline's actually wrong there. This year it was just juniors. So last year they allowed juniors and seniors since seniors hadn't had that opportunity, but this year was just juniors and it'll be juniors from here on out that took it. And then we left this on there for March. This was the plan for March, was to do another round of the Aspire for freshmen, but due to the school closures that didn't quite happen. But moving forward into next year, we hope to follow that plan. So the Aspire with freshmen as well as sophomores. So we have that ACT standard aligned data to look at and discuss.
Yeah, and a lot of these things were efforts that came out of last year's first round of giving the test at Garden City High School. We learned a lot giving that to them. In prior years, the ACT was something kids did off campus on their own. They decided whether to do it or not. But last year, we really were able to walk through the whole process with them and debrief with them as soon as they got done and hear them say, well, Mr. Nordby, I am never doing that again. You know, that was hard. I wasn't ready for it. And we heard that a lot of kids saying, I wasn't ready for a 45-minute math test followed by a 45-minute science test, followed by a 45-minute language arts test, followed by a 45-minute reading test. And so we decided to then try to find some ways to get them a better look at where their skills are and some practice and some targeted practice for those that really wanted to do it. And so we learned a lot last year giving this assessment. And, we don't know for sure yet, all the effectiveness of it. As Crystal said, the second round and third round of the ACT Aspire was canceled due to what's happening now with the pandemic. But, it was, I think, a good plan, and we got a lot of really good good information from giving the pre-ACT to juniors and setting them up for some practice sessions. And we also found that when we gave it on campus for free and made it real easy, we had a lot of kids, a lot easy to take. We had a lot of kids taking the assessment that really hadn't thought about it before. Sure, it's free, it's here, I'll take it. And, you know, we really wanted to find a way to make sure that kids were prepared for what they were going to sit in through, and it wasn't something that just took place outside of the high school. And so, as Crystal was going to show you here, our participation numbers went up quite a bit last year.
Before you move on, can I ask a quick question about the ACT Academy?
Yes.
Yep. Just to understand it a little better. So is that the part that goes over individually with students, or is that, am I off on that?
The ACT Academy is a free online tool that kids can use to practice, and teachers can use it in their class. They can assign questions. They can make a short assignment for a reading class or a science class or a math class. Students can take their pre-ACT score, enter it into the ACT Academy, and it will give them targeted practice. They'll say, okay, well, you got a 24 in language arts, but your goal is to get higher. Here's how you can get a higher score. Practice on these skills because you're lacking in these areas. And so it's free through ACT. Actually, anyone can use it to practice, even if you don't have a pre-ACT score. So we've invested in that for some targeted practice. But it's an individual. Any student can sit down and use it.
And can they access that outside of the building, like on their own time as well?
From the ACT.org website, you can get on, and any student can get on from anywhere as long as they've got internet connection. They can get on and use those practice tests.
Okay, great. It's awesome to find out information that my daughter doesn't share with me.
Yeah,
So thank you for
yeah,
that.
we found out about this tool last summer when we were looking at some things to try to, as I said, try to intercede in some of the struggles we saw our kids having. And it was really a neat resource. And we were lucky enough to be able to have someone come out from ACT in October and work with our teachers on how to use this tool to try to set up practice sessions for it.
Great, thank you.
It's pretty, what's neat about it is exactly what Mr. Nordby said. You can go two different routes. The teachers can set up assignments and activities, and then the kids can complete that. And then they can also go more independent study route where it auto assigns based on their performance and their scores. This is our participation rate for the last couple of years. So it lists the graduating class. So that was seniors that school year. And then out of those total number of seniors, the number of them who took the ACT. So they could have taken it their senior year, junior year. They could have taken it multiple times. Just out of all the seniors, this is the number of students who took the ACT by the time that they graduated. So in 2017, we had 213 students, which with participation rate was about 52%. In 2018, it was 192 students, which is about 44%. And then we saw that jump 2019, where the state paid for juniors and seniors to take it, 251 students, so 6%. And then 20 years seniors, we don't have our finalized numbers yet, since still some off-campus assessments being given. We'll have this summer.
Yeah, and this shows 3 years of data. Looking back at it, a normal year for Garden City High School, if you keep going back in time, is just a little above or below 200. Sometimes it's in the 190s, sometimes it's just in the low 200s, but that's a pretty normal what we've been experiencing through time. So this jump up to 251 was pretty large for us as far as our participation rate jump.
And then this is our, oops, sorry.
And I'll go back to the participation rate while you're pulling that up.
Yep.
The state of Kansas had, when they made it free last year, we expected a jump in the number of students who were going to take it because it was at school and it was free, and sure, I'll do it. The state of Kansas had an increase of around 600, maybe a little less than 600 students taking the test. Garden City, as you can see, had about 60. So 10% of that jump in the state came from Garden City High School, which, you know, that's a big increase for us.
And then this slide is the our trends data for the ACT. So it's the average score of our high school, Garden City High School, compared to the average score of the state. Again, the year listed is the senior class that graduated that year. So I don't want to read these numbers off to you from the table, but some of the things that we noticed when looking at this was we tended to follow the trend line of the state. So if the state slightly decreased, we seemed to be along those lines, same as increasing. There are a couple instances where we don't follow, like we would increase when the state would slightly decrease.
Yeah, the overall trend, both for the state and for Garden City High School, as Crystal said, we tend to follow the state trend line. The overall trend is down over the last few years. And as the state composite fell 0.4 of a point, ours fell 0.3 of a point. And that kind of stayed that way for most of the subject areas. Two exceptions were the state's scores fell 0.5 point, and ours in English, we fell 0.1 of a point. So we did decrease on that, but not near to the amount the rest of the state did. And then math. While the rest of the state went down 0.4 of a point on their average math score, ours actually went up 0.1 of a point. So we kind of bucked the trend there for mathematics. And we found through talking with the kids, and one of the reasons we went to the ACT Academy and the pre-ACT is that in getting our data back from there, that a number of our students were not preparing themselves by taking what ACT considers the core. The ACT organization sets out a listing of math, science, language arts courses that it considers the core, that if you take these courses and challenge yourself, you're going to be ready to take this, college ready, and take this assessment. Well, in this class from 2019, where we had so many extra kids taking it, turned out only 58% of our students reported taking the ACT core sets of classes.
Repeat percentage. I'm sorry. What percentage of students took the core? Oh crap! Are we freezing?
Which was an all-time low for us. Register, and on that they have to list all the courses that they took in high school, and so their self-reporting was only 58% as finishing the core, which was low for us. The state of Kansas also saw a significant decrease all across the state in the number of kids who were taking the core. The state of Kansas had only 70% of the entire state taking the core, which was down at least 10% for them. So it was something we saw, a trend we saw, and the rest of the state saw the same thing once they opened it up for anyone to be able to take.
Mr. Nordby, we missed the first part of your answer.
Sorry.
What percent of?
Okay. For our students, it was 58%. Correct. Yeah, 58% self-reported as taking the core.
And Crystal, what's on the composite in each of these subject matters? What's the score that's considered the minimum score to be college ready?
They don't have a composite college readiness benchmark. It's just, they have the readiness benchmarks in each subject area, but not a composite readiness.
Yeah,
benchmark.
those
So what
those
are
benchmarks are at the bottom, but yeah, there is no set composite.
I missed the thing on the bottom, okay?
Yeah. So in English, it's 18, in math, it's 22, science, 23, and reading also 22.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have any kind of data on kids that maybe scored a little bit lower the first time they took it and then chose to retake it?
We don't have the data just offhand. I'm sure it's something we could mine out. We do have a number of kids who take it. Matter of fact, there are a lot of kids that take it, especially that might be in an advanced math class, that like to take it at the end of their sophomore year when that algebra 2 is fresh. And then if they don't like their score, they retake it through their junior and senior year. I'm sure we could go back and probably use Illuminate to find the kids that took multiple testings. But what ACT reports to us for these official reports is just the student's best score, the final score.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that is the last of our slides. I can end my screen sharing if there's no more questions about a particular slide, so you can see our faces.
Does ACT or the state have any data or indication of why scores look like they're going down? At least for the last year, for sure, but even in some of the previous years, it looks like the scores are going down. Do they?
Yeah. I haven't heard anything from looking at our data. We study it each year. We get reports on things. One of the concerning things for me was while we have a lot of students at the top, we also have way too many, like I said, not taking the core, even dropping down to 58. For me, I would love to see more kids taking the core. I want to see more kids in chemistry and physics and some of those courses that challenge them. And taking a look at those students primarily, it's a lot of those students that aren't taking the core, their performance shows. And so I think in a lot of cases, just anecdotally for us, it's not taking a rigorous curriculum yet still going ahead and sitting for the test. That really impacts kids' scores. For our students that don't take the core score 1.5 to 2 points lower on the ACT than students that do. And so that makes a big difference.
I know the building tried to start addressing that with those individual plans of study conversations. So if you're interested in going this route, you want to take the ACT, then these are some courses that you need to make sure are on your radar is enrolling in and taking.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I'm glad Crystal mentioned that, especially with the freshmen taking the pre-ACT. We can start those conversations with moms and dads and kids sooner that say, okay, your career aspiration is medicine, but you don't plan on taking any biology classes or science classes while you're in high school. Those don't fit. So what can we do to set you up for success? And how can we get you started sooner as a freshman in that discussion and not waiting until the fall of your junior year and taking the pre-ACT and finding out your score is not really where you want it to be.
And just because it's fresh in my mind, because I did go to the counseling sessions for enrollment for my freshmen, and I know, she does go over the classes that are, if you are college bound or what have you, but I don't really remember her putting the ACT connection with that. And she may have, I just may not have remembered that, but that's definitely a good time to start educating parents, because I think sometimes you think about the courses, whatever your kids, might be thinking that they want, but you don't necessarily think about the testing part, or at least I guess I didn't, but just.
No, that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the board?
How does Avid fit into this?
Well, Avid, that's a good question. And one more reason we really like Avid, because Avid is about college and career readiness. It's about setting your sights, making a post-secondary plan before you get there. So you actually have a plan. And then this fits right in with studying different careers through your plan to studying educational options through Avid, and then setting yourself up with good college study skills, organizational skills, writing skills, all those Wicker strategies. So it fits in there pretty well. It's really a post-secondary based program, which is one more reason we really like it. The more we can it really dovetails so that we're sending one message.
Hey, Steve, this is Alex.
Yep.
Does, on the ACT Comprehensive Data, the scores down there, does that show for the juniors or seniors taking it for the first time or the third time? How's that?
Yeah, it's just the best score.
Okay.
And they've even talked now about making some changes for next year as far as allowing kids to do a super score. You can take just the parts you want to improve on. So that'll be an interesting change for the ACT. So if your son or daughter takes it and they don't like their math score, the next time they can just take math. They don't have to retake the entire assessment, which will be an interesting change from ACT.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So does the college readiness benchmarks, is that going up from is that a composite of all colleges, or is that state, or is that part of our college group or region, or how's the college readiness benchmarks get to those values?
Well, ACT sets those values, and what they've done, my understanding of it is they've studied the success of students over time, and they've gone back and, okay, you've been successful in college algebra. Well, what was your ACT score? And they've studied all those kids through time, and those are basically ACT's kind of proprietary benchmarks. If you get a 22 in math, you're going to be able to go and pass college algebra. You're college ready. So that's kind of their own, like I said, proprietary number.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hey, thanks, Crystal and Steve, for giving us the report on that tonight.
Hey, one last piece, brag time, with ACT. We just received word today that we had 10 of this year's graduating class recognized by the state of Kansas as State of Kansas scholars based on their ACT score and completing the rigorous ACT scholars curriculum. Last year we had 6. The year before that we had 2. This year we have 10 in this class. So, you know, that's a great thing for this class of seniors. And we also received words earlier this week that in my tenure, we have the first perfect ACT score out of our junior class that just took it in February. We just got those scores within the last week or so. And we've had our first perfect ACT score within that group. So hopefully when everybody can come together and we can have board meetings, I can bring him on in and let him be recognized for that. So that's a really cool thing, ACT wise, both good pieces of information that we just got.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
All Okay, well, again, we appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. When I say that on screen, I feel like we're like on TV. Thank you for joining us. All right. Okay, so we'll move on to the district assessment plan update. Crystal, you're on again.
Oh, I muted myself, sorry. Okay, me again. So let me share my screen again. So I know I've presented about this plan before. I believe it was at the beginning of last year. So I just kind of want to give you an update on it. It hasn't changed drastically, but some things have been updated. And then share how it's beneficial for our teachers. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to talk about our comprehensive assessment plan. So this is a pretty in-depth document that we've created district-wide, and its intent is to answer these essential questions for our staff. So for teachers, for administrators, for district administrators, why we assess what the purpose of it is, how we're supposed to use that data, how we're not supposed to use that data. So these are the essential questions that this document helps answer. It addresses many more questions as well, but these are the main ones. So the document talks about why we assess, what types of assessments that a teacher would give, what information they get from each of those assessments, how they're going to use this information in whatever role that they hold, who they'll share assessment data with, which actual assessments they give and when, if they're a classroom teacher, the grade level appropriate goals for each assessment, and then assessments they would give to gather additional data on students who have some individualized needs that we need to address. So one of those first essential questions is, why do we assess? So within the document, and in the bottom right corner of the PowerPoint, there's a page number, and this is actually the page number of the assessment plan. So where you would find, for example, this slide, the assessment philosophy, where you would find this information in the actual plan. So this information is on page 2, but just sets forth our philosophy of assessment, that we believe it's a way to measure, monitor, and report student progress on grade level standards. We believe that assessment provides students with multiple opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge as a learner, and then it's a way to communicate to all different stakeholders strengths as well as areas for improvement based on learning outcomes and grade level standards. We also talk about the purpose of assessment. So we believe it's evidence for action and process for engaging our teachers and our students in continuous improvement. We believe that assessment allows students to reflect on their learning, again, informs our stakeholders to help maintain accountability. It's a measure of our students' understanding of grade level standards, allows us to monitor their growth on those standards, and then again, identifies areas of weakness or areas that need improved and areas of strength. So another section of the plan talks about the types of assessments that will be administered. And again, this document is meant for people in multiple roles. So I always go back to the classroom teacher when I speak, but it applies to all different roles. So in the document, it talks about the different types of assessments they'll give. For example, we give universal screeners, we give diagnostic assessments, benchmark, summative. So in the document, it talks about those different types of assessments, because usually when you use the word assessment, it gets all lumped together. And there are different kinds with different purposes. So the document kind of references those, explains a little more what they are, the difference between, and the difference between them. And then going a little further on that, it talks about what information they'll gather from each type of assessment. So this is, again, just a screenshot from the document. In the document, it explains several different assessments. The screenshot here just has the screener and the diagnostic assessment, but it talks about the purpose of those assessments, so how it's intended to be used and how it's not intended to be used. So for example, our universal screener, which is currently FastBridge, it's intended to identify kids who may be at risk and what type of support they'll need. However, that assessment's not meant to assign grades out of. So we want teachers and all of our staff members to be aware of the purpose behind each type of assessment, what's appropriate for its data, and then what's not appropriate. Another question that's addressed in that document is how will I use this information in my current role? So kind of what I referred to earlier, this isn't just intended for classroom teachers. So we kind of break down what type, depending on the role that you have, how you would use each type of data. So as a teacher, I'm going to use screening data, probably different than a district administrator or my building administrator. Same thing as the board, you'll use data differently than, or look at it differently than a classroom teacher or, again, an administrator. So this just kind of breaks down different types of assessments and the pieces, or what part of those assessments are appropriate for the different roles that we have within our school district. And then another essential question is, who will I share this assessment data with? So again, we have lots of data and information coming in. Not all pieces of all data are applicable to different roles. So this kind of breaks down, as a parent, the decisions and questions that I want to be answered when looking at data, and so the information that I would need to answer those questions. Same thing with district administrators, teachers, even students, because we want students to be aware of their data as well and reflect on it, and be able to apply that in their future learning. Another question answered is, which assessments do I administer and when? So this is more of the logistic pieces, which is very common questions that our staff asks. So it's basically, this is just a screenshot of a kindergarten. This is actually comes from our Spanish track, but just a breakdown of when, so what testing window, fall, winter, spring, they give what assessments. So it's almost just like a quick snapshot for them to reference on when I give what tests, what's the cut score. And we have this for every grade level, K through 12. And then we have, pre-K through 12. And then we have a couple for our Spanish track, our pre-K through 2 Spanish track. So again, just a reference for them, a real quick visualization of what assessments I give and when.
Crystal, when you say the
I have a-
Spanish track, is that for who their first language is Spanish, or what does that mean exactly?
So we have a couple, Buffalo Jones has a Spanish track, and then there's one at Garfield where they teach the majority in Spanish at the beginning level, so pre-K, and then they transition them to all English by the time they're done in 2nd grade. So the assessments we give are tweaked a little bit for those students. So for example, kindergarten, they're learning to read in Spanish. So we give the Spanish screening assessments as opposed to the English. So they start off with Spanish and they transition to the English by the time they're, I believe by the time they're in 2nd grade, they're completely English.
Okay, thanks.
And this is just another screenshot of that reference guide. So it's just not as visual, but it gives a little more of the details. So the assessment, why we give it, how it's administered, where they'll put the data. So just a lot of logistics that I don't need to know all the time. So this document helps them reference when they're ready to so they can answer some of those questions. And then another goal or question that this document answers, and it was on the previous screenshot as well, but it's the appropriate goal for this assessment. So what's appropriate for the grade level I'm working for as far as a goal? So this is just, again, a screenshot of some of those resources. This happens to be FastBridge, but it's basically, it's just benchmark scores. So what would be considered high risk, some risk, low risk, and we have this for the majority of the assessments we give, but all of this is combined together in that assessment plan for teachers to easily reference. And then the last question that I have listed is, how do I gather additional data on students with individualized needs? So our assessment plan applies to our general population, so the majority of students, but we also have those tracks of students that we need to do some additional assessments with, depending on their individual needs. So for example, this is a flow map or chart of our ESL students. So as students are enroll, and if we identify that they have another language besides English that's spoken in their home, then the process that's followed to determine if those students need English as a second language support. So this is included in our assessment plan, as well as dyslexia. So how if we believe a student is struggling with dyslexia, this would be the process we would follow to gather some more data to identify if those kids have those are in need of extra assistance. This one, I'm assuming I'll probably present this again next year. So this dyslexia piece may look a little different next year as the state's releasing some more guidelines on screening for dyslexia. So this is what we currently use. It's assessments we already give, but that may be tweaked a little bit depending on the state's guidelines that they'll release. And then this is where, if you want to read this 150-page document, that's amazing. This is where we get to it. So it's on our district webpage. You'll just go to departments, Office of Learning Services, Curriculum and Instruction Resources, and you'll find it says a comprehensive assessment plan. It's a PDF that you can download. You can also just search in the search engine for a comprehensive assessment plan. It will come right up. So it's a PDF shared on our website for all our teachers and public to access if they choose to. And that's all for my presentation. I can, before I stop sharing my screen, was there any slides you wanted me to revisit?
This is Mark. I've got a question. Maybe going back to page 5 in your stakeholder analysis, and you identify that students are basically a stakeholder. You know, this assessment stuff is pretty valuable for a student if we're asking that student to set some goals for their learning and then work collaboratively with the school district. But none of these, when we talk about the student or the parent, there's no evaluation of goals. I mean, there's evaluation of standards, but what's that student goal? And so I'm wondering whether we couldn't tweak this. Maybe it's just not listed here, but certainly wouldn't want to leave out the students' goals. If we're pushing them to set goals for their education, then how is this evaluation process giving them feedback on meeting those goals?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that we are doing pieces of that, but definitely need to include it if it's not clear in our plan. That's a great suggestion.
Thanks.
Anything else? Any other questions? Crystal, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. If you do have any questions, if you have a chance and check it out and have any questions, you always can reach me, email or call, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. You seem to get the presentation duties.
I know. We switched to Zoom and I'm on like multiple times.
Well, you're very good at it. So thank you.
It went much smoother. I didn't have dogs or kids yelling or barking. So we did good this time. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
All the way up.
All right. Well, with that, we're ready for board open discussion, I believe. Laura, am I missing anything? Can't hear you.
I think that's what you're ready for.
Okay. You want to start us off?
Sure. The only thing I was going to mention is that KSB is hosting weekly Zoom meetings for boards to talk about some of the stuff that's been going on at noon on Wednesdays. So if you're interested, you can sign up for that. And then also, if you like them on Facebook, Leo Filter has been doing some updates as well with stuff that's been going on in Topeka. So that's
You're cutting out, Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. It's fine.
You sure? Can hear you now. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. Janine, I'm just going in order of how I see you guys on the Brady Bunch. So
On the Brady Bunch screen.
yeah.
So, I attended the roundtables that they had for KSB the last 2 weeks ago. And it was really interesting kind of to see what other school districts have been doing compared to kind of what we've been working on as well. And so it made me feel really good about where we're at with everything and how things have been progressing along. Some of the districts weren't really in the same place. So it was really nice to see how far we are going. So, and that's it. That's all I have.
Awesome. Alex?
I don't have any, just trying to keep up with all the latest and greatest information. It's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Mark?
I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer?
I don't have anything.
Tim? Sound?
Just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I'm reopening my office with modified hours. We're going to be working 6 to 6, Monday through Saturday. So I'm not sure how that's going to affect my ability to be at these board meetings. So I'm going to try to swing it. So I'm working the early shift, but yeah, I don't know what it means for us, but it's going to be like that for me until the threat dissipates. So I don't see this stopping anytime soon.
Okay.
Maybe I'll Zoom in between patients.
Okay. Thanks for the notice on that. Steve and I did sit in on the empirical tax abatement meeting this week. So I think the committee's recommending granting the 60% tax abatement for empirical. So that was an interesting meeting to be a part of. And if you have any questions or concerns, talk to Steve. Do not ask me, please. So that's all I have. Steve?
I might just add on to that a little bit too. Really thanks to EcoDevo for their leadership with that project. That's a big project in our community, and selfishly from the school district standpoint, that's one that we were involved in fairly early as far as what kind of contribution we could make with the college to developing the workforce for that segment of industry, and really looking forward to expanding those conversations to work with some of our other industry in Finney County. So that's been a learning process, but a really good example of people coming together to fill a need in our community. Just call attention to, on the consent agenda tonight, the board approved a memorandum of understanding with Finney County regarding the testing. And I know a number of our nurses have volunteered to jump in and assist with that. So first, a huge thanks to them for stepping up and putting themselves out there to be involved with that. Obviously, if we need them for some school-related purpose, we have the priority for them. But while we're out of school and there's less demand on their time, we certainly appreciate them getting involved. Thanks to Robert Reese, who's our new county administrator, Stephen Green, who's the emergency management people, Colleen Dries with the Finney County Health Department for their work in all this. And it really brings it back that this is a community issue that we're all dealing with. So I know today was their opening day for some of their testing, and so while Finney County has of Seward, Ford, and Finney County, we've kind of been a little lower than the others with increased testing. I'm sure we're likely to see our numbers rise, and just kind of calling attention to how that progression of this pandemic is even reaching us in rural southwestern Kansas, and appreciate everybody doing all they can. I think Dana and Mark both asked questions, and I think we kind of got around to it by the end of the presentation on family engagement. But as we listened to that, I certainly thought that, yeah, family engagement, the whole conversation is a little different today than it was 30 days ago. And I think the board pointed out some great points that there are things that we're going to learn from that. And parents certainly right now are stepping up and doing more, getting more engaged than they probably have been in the past out of necessity. And so we need to figure out what really works with that and how we find that appropriate sweet spot as we move forward, and at some point kind of return to some semblance of what is normal, but taking some of the good things. And so we do really appreciate all the involvement that our parents are having, and that's something that is has been different and a learning experience over the last 30 days. And then last, really, just to let the board know, I've had contacts from all of our local legislative leaders, and even from Senator Moran's office, and was invited to participate in a meeting that he had last week. Senator Dahl, Representatives Wheeler, and Representatives Jennings have all reached out to check on us, see how things are going, and their leadership through this has been very helpful as well. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with them and kind of advocate for things that are helpful for us and could be, but I just think it's worth noting that that we are hearing from those people. They're interested in what we need and what they can do to help. So I think that's, Madam President, that's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Steve. And just want to continue to thank all of the administration and staff for keep on keeping on. I mean, I know just in my work with parent engagement and just with students, you know, the longer we're out, it seems to be a little bit more of a struggle to maintain the momentum. So I continue to hear good things, and I really just appreciate all the time and hard work. I know I asked Steve the other day, because I was listening to a webinar about just the COVID, you know, the trauma and this and that, about decision fatigue. So I'm sure I'm sure you guys are tired and exhausted, and everything just changes from day to day. So just really appreciate you guys and everything that you're doing. So, all right, well, got a much shorter board meeting done, 7:30 tonight. So I told my kids it's going to be shorter this week, and they said you said that last week. So I didn't lie this time. So the next board meeting will take place on Monday, May 24th. 2020 at 6 p.m. in the board meeting room at the Educational Support Center. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be allowed in the board meeting room. The meeting will be streamed live for public viewing on the district YouTube page at www.youtube.com/USD457. 457 strong, I want my t-shirt.
All right.
All right.
We're working on them. We'll have them soon.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks. Have a good night.
Madam President, can I move to adjourn?
Oh, yes. What would I do without you, Laura? I suppose we need to do that. All right, do I have a second?
This is
Second.
Janine, Alex gets it this time.
Okay. We'll give
All
it to
right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Now you can leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.